Hello, welcome everybody. My name is Karl Soule, and I've been working for Adobe going on almost 20 years, mostly focused on film and television workflows. And with me today is Victoria Nece from the After Effects team. Victoria, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Victoria Nece. I'm Principal Product Manager for After Effects, and I'm relatively new to Adobe in that I've only been here 8.5 years. And before that, I was a motion designer myself. So we've both been at Adobe a long time, and I think we've got some really exciting stuff to show that's in beta right now, give you a sneak peek at some of the things we have on the way. So, Karl, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those of you who are new to this show, what we're really focused on today is talking about the beta program that's across just about all of the digital video and audio apps. This is something that you are invited to participate in if you're not familiar. This is something that's found inside of the Creative Cloud desktop application. And I think I actually want to start there to just kind of highlight this really quickly. In the Creative Cloud desktop application, if you go over to the side here and click on apps, and then come down to this little flask icon here for beta apps, you can actually see all the different Creative Cloud beta apps that are available to you. So these can live concurrently on your machine. It's a really nice way of getting an early sneak peek at what is coming. These apps are updated in some cases daily. As we're getting close to a release, we will be pushing out new updates as we're getting feedback from customers. And once you're inside of the beta applications, you'll see that there is a little icon of a flask up in the top here. You can click on that to bring up a list of any changes that have happened in the latest and greatest beta. You can also click on all changes to see just basically everything that's been worked on or is in development in the beta application. So this program is successful because folks like you can actually have access to the beta early. It helps us as there's just millions of different potential configurations, particularly on the PC side. There's so many different hardware configurations that can impact how software is done. The beta just really helps us get feedback, and it also helps us in driving feature development. I've seen features on the beta that really, when they ship, they're more like a 2.0 version of the feature because of all the feedback that we've gotten from the beta forums. It has given us the ability to make that feature more real world in one development cycle, as opposed to having to wait to release something, then get feedback, and then come out with like a 2.0 or a 3.0 version of that. So it really, really helps us to move fast with this. Now, I'm going to start in Premiere. Victoria is going to cover all the cool stuff over in After Effects in just a bit. But since we're over in Premiere Pro, I want to go ahead and show you three main new things that have come to the latest beta release. One of the first ones is just an overall change to the software interface. This is something we're calling the Spectrum UI. It's something that is across many different Adobe applications, and it has a wide range of subtle changes to the way the interface looks. These interface changes are designed to just provide some new visual continuity across all the different Adobe applications. It also makes things a little bit more modern looking. People have said they like having rounded corners on buttons and things. That's actually one of the new features that you'll see in here. It also means better legibility, the way we look at the different fonts, the way we look at the idea of the icons. We're meeting new guidelines for making sure that those icons are more legible, they're easier to understand. There's less of a potential to misinterpret two icons looking similar and the like. This is also designed to help meet guidelines for legibility for people that maybe have some vision impairment. I know, I spent 45 years of my life without having to wear these, but they're kind of a day-to-day thing now. And as that happens, we do need to make sure that we can see what's going on. This also includes some changes in preferences dealing with the appearance of Premiere. So this reduce contrast option is something you can see. I can turn that off, and the text pops out the look of the icons really pops out on the screen. But if I find that's distracting while I'm really focused on content and I want to keep the interface a little bit more subdued, I can easily reduce the contrast on these items as well. There's even something new in here. I'm just going to show this for a second because this was actually a request that we had from customers. This is the light interface. Now, I would never
It's
use
so
this
bright.
if it's so bright. I would never use this for actually reviewing my video, but I'll tell you what, that interface actually comes in handy for situations where I'll turn it on for just a second here just to showcase this. If I am up in a complicated bin and I'm trying to read different columns of metadata, this is actually something that can help with that when you're really, really trying to, focus more on data. And obviously there's kind of an in-between point that we can turn on here called dark. So there's dark, darkest, and light are the different options that are now found under preferences.
I'll
So
say
this,
we've also
yeah,
heard from folks to jump in that the light mode's really good if you're working in a room with really bright sunlight or reflective displays, or if you're on a projector, like you're teaching, you're
yes.
showing something, you're demoing, that light mode can be really, really useful in places where it's just a little too dark to be in dark mode. But I'm definitely a dark mode, I want to be in a cave kind of person.
Absolutely. And I have to say, this is kind of a welcome change from a time. There were places that I used to have to demonstrate when I lived over in Southeast Asia, particularly in places in India, where you'd just be handed a projector and you'd be in an environment that was completely unlight. You had no control over the lighting situation. That light mode can really, really help just with legibility and being able to get concepts and points across. But from an editor's perspective, I would always go back to darkest as soon as I got a chance to, is when I'm in my controlled cave here. This is how I would want to use this. And that high contrast mode is just really, really important. We never want the interface to kind of interfere with your creative process and focusing on, the task at hand, which is developing the video that you're working on. But we also want to give you the options to just make it easier to see things, just depending on what task you're using. Just know that those features are in there. And this overall change to the UI is, it includes things like different colors. And if you're not familiar, just this isn't something that's brand new to the new beta, but just something to be aware of. Things like marker colors, label colors, have been going through some revamps, new features and capability built in here. Something I've been getting a lot of requests for on social media is, as we went to this new color palette here, they wanted to go back to the original. These are the brighter colors that Premiere used to ship with. And we've even come up with some other additional options down here. This ability to have label color presets is kind of an important new feature that lets you sort of customize and deal with different colors, including this editorial one that I love because it has different colors for different specific types of media that we might be working with. So all of this kind of comes together with this new the new Spectrum UI redesign of Premiere. It's subtle in a lot of ways. It's not really obtrusive, but it's just going to give you more information with less visual clutter than what we had before. I actually came up with, this is something Ben Insler and I did for the NAB show a couple months ago. Using these label colors, we created a special VFX yellow options so that if you just wanted to focus on looking at visual effect shots, for example, this makes all the other colors of all your other clips black and just lets the VFX shots shine as bright yellow so that you can quickly go through a sequence and look for those. So a lot of fun things, both with color, with overall design that's kind of come to the software in the last few releases. But the new one here, again, is the new Spectrum UI. I'll show you one other little thing that has to do with this, and it also has to do with some of the audio features that we've come up with. When I solo a track, a lot of people who are new to Premiere are confused as far as what the difference between mute and solo are. Solo lets me pick one track and say mute everything else. Mute lets me mute specific tracks. There used to not be any visual connection between these two features, but now when I click to solo a track, it automatically mutes all the other tracks for me. So there's kind of a nice little visual indicator of what's going on there. And it really pops with the new Spectrum UI design so that you can see how those buttons now look, which I think is really cool. Okay, changing gears. Victoria, I know over in After Effects, you guys have had for a couple of releases now this properties panel, and new stuff has been coming to that. How was
Yes.
that received by the After Effects community?
It's, I think, the fastest adopted new feature we've had in After Effects history. It's just, you just use it. You don't even think about it. It's just there. It feels like it's been there all along in the best way. It's really changed the way that people work in After Effects. And so I think you've got some properties panel news for us when it comes to Premiere, don't you?
I do, yeah. Over in Premiere, we now actually have a properties panel. And this is a contextual properties panel. And to demonstrate this, I'm actually going to go back into Premiere here and let me switch over to a different workspace here. In fact, I think I was probably on my production workspace. Let me see there. We'll just close that side of it here. Just to kind of talk through this a little bit without using this. One of the challenges working with Premiere is the fact that Premiere is made up of all these different panels. And we really only work with a few of those panels at any given time. All of the panels are listed under the window menu. You can see that there's a bunch of them here. And we want to make it easier to find the relevant controls for what you happen to be clicking on. So in the current workflow, if I'm working on audio and I want to make some changes to the audio on this clip, I would have to know to go into the essential sound panel, make sure my clips are tagged, go in here, and maybe if this was dialogue, I would have to select dialogue, or sound effects and select sound effects. Or I'd have a whole other different set of controls if I went to the effect controls, and here's where I could see my volume, my channel volume, a panner control, and so on and so forth. But it would be up to me to find those controls. Similarly, if I click on a text layer and I want to make changes to the text on this, well, the essential sound panel is not going to do that. I would have to go into the essential graphics panel. Is it just called graphics now? Where did it go?
Yeah, it's now merged into the properties panel, so
It
you won't
is.
have essential
Okay.
graphics on its own. I think there's a graphics and templates thing. But this is one of the big changes that comes with the properties panel is a lot of the previously separate panels just become one contextual thing.
Exactly. So now if I go back and click on that audio clip, you can see that properties is now showing me audio controls. If I click on a video layer, this is showing me position, anchor point, scale, rotation, opacity controls here. I don't have to have the effect controls open to access these. They're right here, right available to me. And there's even a button down here to adjust the speed or duration of a clip. So I can bring that up instead of having to learn and remember to right click on a clip and bring up speed duration here. So it's just that whole idea of having one location to be able to access this. And as I alluded to there, I went looking for the essential graphics panel because I'm a long-term Premiere user. I've been trying to find it. It is now part of this properties panel. So clicking on a text layer in Premiere, this brings up all those properties here so that I can quickly come in here and scale, reposition this wherever I need to, and even make some additional changes by clicking on the text layer here. I could go in and add a background to this. Let's do something really bright and colorful. And you can now see that's being added to the text layer there. So again, without having to jump around and have a million different panels as I'm moving through different types of content on my timeline, this is automatically adjusting to provide the most relevant controls for that type of content. All
That's really
right.
handy. And it's gonna save
Any,
so much time because
yeah.
it's the little bits of time too that it saves. It's all the little moments where you have to go hunting for something, remember where something is, go twirl something down, open up another panel. All of those seconds add up. And I think there's just a really big aggregate speed increase that you get. And that's what we've seen in After Effects with there's just way less twirling and way less hunting, and it makes everything feel a lot more immediate. You don't get distracted halfway through making a change.
Absolutely, absolutely. Keeping you in that contextual moment and less hunting around for stuff. And that's a big part of just helping not only new users, but helping existing users find what they're looking for, giving you that contextual capability for really looking into stuff. And if you twirl even further into this, obviously this little three dot menu here provides more things like opening advanced effect controls. That will bring up the effect controls panel. Adjusting color takes me to the Lumetri color panel. So keeping everything kind of contextual so that the properties panel kind of becomes that conduit to get you where you need to go if there is more advanced control that you need. But a lot of the basic controls are going to be right here, ready for you when you need them.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And you can do
super.
multiple things at once too. You can adjust multiple clips at the same time, and that's new with this. And I think that's a huge time saver.
How many times has this come up for experienced editors? I have all of these clips. I need to make some kind of an adjustment. Maybe I'm rotating them. Maybe I'm adjusting transparency, opacity, or something different. I select multiple clips, and all of a sudden, my effect controls panel says the dreaded multiple clips selected and grays out all my controls for me. Properties allows me to do these multiple selections, make changes to multiple clips simultaneously, and it's just such a better way of accessing this type of information. So not only did it provide kind of a new portal for this, but it's added new functionality. So I just think you guys have hit a home run in the design, UI design, just coming up with this properties panel. So love to hear from anybody else out there. If you're in the chat, if you're on Behance, please feel free to put comments, questions. We'd love to hear from you there. I've got one more, and then I'm going to pass things over to Victoria here because I know you've got a lot to cover. We didn't really cover After Effects last month, and there's just been so much that's come into the beta, particularly around the world of 3D. But the last one that I very quickly wanted to cover is actually found in the Essential Sound panel. And this has been, the kind of one-stop shop for doing adjustments of things like dialogue, music, sound effects. And in fact, with sound effects, we've gotten a lot of questions about ways to add sound effects into the sequence themselves. You can definitely import libraries of existing sound effects, but if you don't have those libraries, if your library is missing a particular option, just wanted to highlight that under the Essential Sound panel, if you go to the Browse tab, this is actually browsing Adobe stock for different sound effects. And one of my favorite features when it comes to anything Adobe stock related is this little checkbox marked free, because who doesn't like free? By checking this box, this is actually going to limit my search results for things that are free. So if I'm looking for some sort of a, static, let's see if I can type here on camera. For whatever reason, typing on camera is one of the most terrifying things for me. There we go. So I can see I've got a bunch of different options here. I can click on any of these. There's just a little buzzy static. Here's another one, communications bay. Kind of a nice ambient background here. So once I have something that I want to use, if I want to drop this into a new track, or let's just put this in the sequence over here, I can just take this and actually drag it and drop it right into the sequence. And now I've added this sound effect right into my sequence to be able to play around with this. So we're really excited to bring sound effects not only into Adobe stock, but to have this ability to use the Essential Sound panel to just find what you're looking for, get them right into your sequence very, very quickly. All right. I think that's everything I've got to cover right now. I'm going to hand it over to you, Victoria.
That's a ton of good stuff. I'm really excited to see Spectrum come to Premiere. We have that in beta and After Effects as well. And we've had some really good feedback from our beta users that has had us make a lot of changes to the design. We've made tweaks and adjustments. We learned a lot about how it looked with a lot of third-party scripts and tools when obviously we can't test all of those in the lab. And so the beta feedback has been a huge part of our development process with these features. And some of that's also then informed what Premiere has done. And so there's a lot of interaction between the teams
Back and
too.
forth.
Yeah,
I want to call out really quickly. There's 15,500 free sound effects. Thank you, Francis Crossman, who's watching during his lunch break. Yeah, it is just the beginning of what we're going to do with the properties panel. Right now, there's a lot of the basics are in there. Just watch and you'll see this evolve over time.
Yeah, and very much the same with the properties panel in After Effects. And in fact, one of the things I'll be showing today is a couple recent additions on the AE side. So this is really a new surface in our tools. It's a new all-in-one place to go when you're looking for what can I do with the thing I have selected. And I think that's really empowering for newer users because there's a lot of tools in these products. These are big, complex applications. And just to have that where do I go from here place is really, really helpful if you're just getting started. But again, if you're a longtime user like us, it's a big time saver. So I find myself reaching for the properties panel all the time. And in fact, that's one of the things I'm going to show here is I have the ability to not just select a shape and get all of my shape properties here. I've even got a contents browser. If I've got a complex shape with lots of sub-shapes in it, I can get to all of those individually and even navigate in the properties panel. I have the ability, if I click on text, to get into some full text controls here. I can get pretty much anything that was in the character and paragraph panels is here. I don't have to go open a separate panel for this. But what's new here and is currently in beta is that if I click on a light, I get my light options now as well as my transforms. And this is really handy because I've been doing a lot with 3D where I'm adjusting lights, turning things on and off, changing the source for an environment light, just making lots of little tweaks. And this makes it really, really fast to do that. Similarly, if I have my camera selected, I have just zoom on this camera. It's a pretty simple camera, but I can open up my camera settings with one click and get to all the details, really dial in my camera controls. If you're using classic 3D, you'll get the full depth of field settings in there. There's a lot of details that have gone into the camera options piece there. So just having that properties panel means I don't have to go digging and twirling and trying to find that thing I want to change. And in fact, for this scene, one of the things I want to do, and you may have seen this before, we've demoed this a couple of times, but I've got a couple new bits here too. I want to go into my assets and I want to find my soft daylight EXR. And I'm going to use this to light my scene. And that's with an environment light. This is only in the advanced 3D engine. What it does is it actually uses the spherical image. It's like you shined a flashlight through the sphere and the bright parts will light things up and the dark parts will be shadowy and it can cast shadows and you get reflections. They're a really lovely way to light something really quickly and get something that looks super polished and super professional with even sometimes just a single light. So these are a really powerful tool. And in this case, I don't have to go twirling down here to choose my light source and open this up and go into light options. I don't have to do any of that. I can just choose my source right here. I want that soft daylight EXR. And now you'll see that this model has this just really lovely reflection on it.
Nice.
So super quick, and I didn't have to go digging for that. And it just lets me see what can I actually change with this layer that I've selected, in this case, my environment light. So I love the properties panel. I've been using After Effects most of my life, and it has really changed the way I use the tool. It's one of the things I reach for first. But it doesn't replace the timeline fully. I use the timeline when I'm doing things over time, when I'm keyframing, when I'm writing expressions. And when I'm just changing a property, I reach for the properties panel. So they really work hand in hand. They're designed to be companions. It's not really a one or the other kind of situation. So lots of good stuff in there. Another quick thing with this composition before I show you another few things that are new. One of my favorite features, been in beta for a little while and is going to be coming to release very soon, is the ability to bring in animated models. This works with GLB and GLTF files, and this is so much fun to play with. There's tons of stock ones out there, but it's also a great way to bring in things created in other 3D tools. You can export stuff with the animation baked in. And so I can go from this fairly decent thing where I'm panning around this, we're twirling this around in space, but it's still kind of static because the watch isn't moving at all. So I'm going to go down to my GLB layer here, and you'll see there's this new animation options section. And what I'm going to do is choose, this one just has one animation embedded in it. It doesn't have a name. It's 1 second long. I'm going to choose that, and you'll see my layer got a lot shorter because this is now a layer that has 1 second of animation. But I've done something ahead of time, and I've time remapped that to retime that 1 second of animation. So now it doesn't just pop open, but I'm using the same exact animation with different timing to reverse that, paste that back over here on the timeline. So now I'm closing that watch back up again. You can time stretch stuff smoothly. This isn't like footage where if you slow something way down, you get stepping between frames. It's going to smoothly interpolate the motion of the model. So you get some really cool, powerful stuff where you could have a very linear explosion of this model and then ease that in After Effects, reverse it, retime it, have something pop partway open and hold. You can do all of that with this one single simple animation that was done on the 3D side. So now we've got that animation built in here, and this is ready to go. You may also notice this model looks a little bit different. That's because the team's made a bunch of changes to the way that we're doing 3D shading. This is physically based rendering in the advanced 3D engine, and we've done some improvements in this space so that it's going to be a little more physically accurate and more reflecting real world physics. And that's the big idea with physically based rendering, is that it does a lot of the real world stuff for you, so that you can get something that just looks good out of the box, particularly combined with an environment light. I think that's a really powerful combination. So I've got my nice watch animation here now. I've got some text and shape animation. I've got a couple little animated spotlights, but we want to take this one step further. First thing we're going to do, we're going to throw in a background, and I'm going to throw on a little color correction effect here. Let's just make this sort of purple to match, maybe like that. We'll tone down the lightness and saturation a bit. But I want to add some more cinematic appearance to this. And I think this looks pretty good. So what we're going to do is jump into a pre-comp where I've pre-composed this watch animation. And I've added a couple layers of stock media here to give it some speckles, some bokeh lights. I've got some nice little light highlights here. And then we're going to do a transition at the end into some footage. So we've got a nice little bit of footage added, but now we want to make this watch, the 3D model, blend in a little better. So what can we do? One of the cool things you can do, and the reason I pre-compose this, is once you pre-compose a 3D scene, and this works with any of the 3D renderers and After Effects, you get access to the 3D channel effects. And these effects let you get the depth data out of the 3D scene and do stuff with it. And that's a lot of fun to play with. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to go to 3D channel extract. And I'm going to show you just to give you an idea of what this is doing. And this will give you a grayscale map of the depth of your scene. And you can adjust the black and white points here. You can tweak this. You can also just use this as a numeric reference. I find that pretty handy. And I can see here that I got this part can be darker because it's further away from the camera. And now that I've done this, I can use this to drive effects. And this is a lot of fun because this lets you apply depth of field, there's depth matting, and you can even do crazy stuff like apply colorama over depth and get wild effects. You can have really fun things here. But I'm going to start with some depth of field. And this effect doesn't even need 3D channel extract. I've just got this here as a reference. But for depth of field, I can set my focal plane and how thick I want that to be so that I have part of this is sharp, part of this is blurry. I can adjust how far back I want that to be. Maybe I think that looks pretty good there. Let's dial that in. I want maybe the watch band to be a little blurrier and this to be sharp. I can make some adjustments like that. And because it's depth aware, those all happen automatically and it's able to know what should be in focus and what should be blurry. There's some cool other effects you can do here. Had a lot of fun with Fog 3D, which is one of those effects that sounds not that fancy. It's been in After Effects for a long time, but it actually lets you do some pretty cool stuff. So maybe instead of white fog further from the camera, I want to do purple fog. I want the watch band to sort of fade into the background a little. So I can then go in here. Maybe I crank this up. I want the fog to start maybe around there. Maybe I want it to end a little further back. Or maybe I want it to end out there and have the closer in stuff nice and bright. I can really play around with this and have this sort of blend into the background. I'm going to uncheck foggy background because it's also fogging my video there. And then I can lower the opacity on that a little bit. I could adjust the color if I want to, if I wanted to go with maybe a deeper purple, really have that fade into the background, or maybe a little more gray, just darker. You can really get some nice color adjustments to your scene if you're making these kinds of tweaks. And these are all things that have been in After Effects for a long time, but now you can use them with advanced 3D. And it really unlocks a lot of cool workflows. So I love using just a little hint of fog. I love fading that down so it's just a little bit of color tone to blend a little better with the background. And so you can mix that with depth of field, have those, you can have one on top of the other. You'll get slightly different results depending on layer order. So you can play with that. The other one that's really fun to play with is in the 3D channel menu here is the depth matte. And I'm actually going to drop this on top. This one lets me trim this in space. And so I can, oh, do I have two copies of this on here? What's going on there? I might have two copies there. I can trim my whole scene here and I can reveal it over time.
Oh, wow.
So you can do some animation. And so I can have the watch not just explode, but also while it's exploding, sort of materialize in space. So you can keyframe this and you can feather it so you can have this appear much more softly. So maybe we want to have this land here as being fully visible. We'll dial that in, say that's about where we want to land. Set that there, go back to the start, and I'm going to crank this down to a low number here. And you'll see that now it's going to animate in over time. Oh, I set the number too low, so it's going to come in a little bit later than I planned. But you can see we get that now materializing into space over time. So you can get these very cool effects very quickly using these just couple of effects in different combinations. And they're really just fun to experiment with. So been having a lot of fun with those. And there's a whole set of things you can do once you can get the depth data out of your 3D scene.
Wow. There's so much granularity when you break it apart like this. It's really, really amazing what kind of creative control that you have to really play around with this stuff.
I'm
I've
actually
been
gonna,
seeing
so go ahead.
Yeah, no, I've been seeing a couple of things. Just there's been some feedback. Roland came up with a great idea for properties panel, just a way of like sort of removing properties that are unwanted and having the ability to kind of recall them so that the properties panel doesn't get bloated. Um, and Wade even came up with a great idea for having hotkeys for the light and dark interfaces within Premiere. I think
Huh,
that would
that'd
be
be fun.
fantastic. Just, if you have to jump in and you're doing like full screen, like an assistant editor is going through and doing file management, I think stuff like that would be fantastic. Roland's got a question for you, Victoria. It looks like, is there an easy, fast way to view all these new 3D effects instead of digging into the effect innards under the menu effects command?
But I'll say it's not actually that many new effects, and these are long time existing effects that we've made work in the new environment. But all of them live under the 3D channel menu. So we've got 3D channel extract to actually get that depth map, and then you have depth matte, depth of field, and fog 3D. So we're talking about really four effects here. They're all in that menu, and they're a lot of fun to experiment with. So I'd say just play with the 3D channel menu because these are going to just work now in a way that before, if you applied them with advanced 3D, you wouldn't see anything. Now these are aware of the 3D engine and able to take advantage of its depth data. For everything but 3D channel extract in this menu, you don't even need to do the channel extract first. You can just access the depth channel directly. 3D channel extract, though, will give you a grayscale map that you can feed into really any effect that takes a layer as an input. So if I apply this, I could then use camera lens blur, colorama, just anything that I want to use where I want to use the brightness of the depth map to change things. You can also use that depth map as a luma matte. And I've seen some very cool tutorials where people have done some distortion of the scene and then luma matted it down so that it looked like there was heat haze in the background and it composited really, really nicely. So this is really kind of saying you can use this now with the full After Effects effects system.
Wow.
So
Wow.
lots of good stuff. Uh, I do want to talk about a couple more 3D things we have on the way. One of them is got this scene here where we want to put a couple 3D models onto this running track. And this doesn't look too good if I just have them sitting on a solid here. But if I don't have this here, they don't really look like they're sitting in space because she's casting a shadow. And these are just kind of hanging out on their own. And that's no fun. So we're introducing shadow catchers. This is another thing that is available in some of the other 3D engines, but now is coming to advanced 3D. So it'll work with 3D models. And that means that I can take this solid and instead of just having it hang out here as a solid, when I turn on cast shadows, and again, I can use the properties panel to do it, which is super handy. I've also been using it I've been throwing some of these properties here into Essential Graphics so that I can reference them once I've pre-composed, I can do things like turn on and off shadows super quickly. There's some nice ways to really streamline your workflow there with using these properties. But in this case, I've turned on my shadows, but I've still got this big, ugly solid in the way. And if I tried turning down the opacity, I would hide the shadows as well. So what I can do now is set accept shadows to on and cast shadows to only, not only, sorry, cast shadows to on and accept shadows to only. And now I've got a matching shadow to this scene. And I've already set up another environment light here to get these shadows casting in a similar direction. I'm using actually a Photo Studio Christmas tree. For some reason, this one worked remarkably well. I went through a bunch of EXR and HDR files I had and found this one cast a pretty convincing similar shadow. So you don't necessarily have to have an environment light that matches your scene exactly, because you can often use these kinds of things in a way where this looks pretty convincing. And so now these things look like they're in the scene. And that's the other piece of this that's really important. That's why we're calling these features 3D compositing features, is we don't expect that you're doing 3D alone by itself in After Effects. We think you've got models, but also video and images and text and shapes and everything else you're doing in After Effects. And we want to combine that into one composition. And we really want you to be able to make it look like it's all part of one thing. So this is shadow catchers. We can also change the shadow color as part of this, because shadows in the real world, if you're trying to make something match footage, they're not actually black. It's pretty rare. You don't get true black. They're going to have a subtle bit of color. And so you might want to tint this just that little bit red, maybe to match her shadow. You could even color pick the other shadows. So we have the ability to change the shadow colors. And this is per layer, so individual layers can have a shadow cast onto them with a different color than what it looks like on a different 3D layer in the same scene. So there's some fun techniques you could do with this, and I'll show one in a second. But here it's just an option to change this color, and right now this is pure black, but I could go in and color pick this. Maybe I want to color pick this. And I find even like these subtle little changes, adding that little hint of color can really make things more realistic. I have my shadow settings cranked way down for speed right now, though. So in lightening that, it looks like I made the whole thing a little bit lighter. So I'd spend some time tweaking that to get really good realism out of it. But I find the shadow catcher and shadow color combination makes a huge difference in terms of making something look like it's really part of your footage. But you can also just use it for wild stylized stuff like this.
Wow.
I made the shadow bright purple. It's glowing. This is, instead of a solid, I'm using the sort of half cylinder stage object as my floor. And I can go in here and I could change this to, let's say we want like lime green like that. And you notice we're casting shadows onto the board and the other objects. Those aren't lime green, so we get this cool glowing floor effect. You can do some cool stuff with this. I've had a lot of fun experimenting with shadow colors. So you can use this for realism, or you can use this for stylization. It's really powerful for both. So it's a lot of fun.
Very cool.
All right, I've got lots more examples here. I think we've got a couple more minutes. So I'm going to show one more 3D thing, and then I'm going to show a couple of our new presets. First thing here, got a very simple move on a snowboard, kind of like that watch animation. I've got another version of it where I've got the same exact snowboard, but I've got it on some snow. And here, this is an object that's like supposed to be the surface of Mars. And we've added this glowing blue shadow to make it look like it's got some ice inside of it. So we're doing some stylized lighting and stylized shadows to also transform the properties of a model. This is just a fun little experiment. And I've been playing around with compositing this and then there's that depth mat to transition this in. We've got fog to blend this into that purple background. We've got some depth of field so that the part that's behind this is a little bit blurrier and softer. We've got a layer of bokeh over top, adding a little bit of a highlight. And then we are using the same depth mat transition to switch from the board being on its own in space to the board being embedded in the snow. And so I've done all of that in one thing. You can mix all of these features together. And then if I go back and turn on the shadows on this, you'll see that I get that lovely cool glow. And again, I've made my shadows something I can turn on using essential properties. So lots of nice ways to use these different pieces as building blocks. And that's the thing I think is so powerful about this is not each of these features in isolation, but what you can do when you bring them all together. You can do some very, very cool stuff that just wasn't possible in After Effects before.
This is amazing. It's just the level of creative control that you have with this. It makes me want to just jump in there and play. And I've been so focused on the Premiere side for so long that it's been a while since I've had one of those days of how does this work, where all of a sudden like 8 hours go by as I've just been kind of playing and tweaking. And this really, really what makes me want to jump into After Effects and just get in there and start to tweak some of this stuff. I did want to take a moment in the middle here to just showcase where you can find a lot of this information and make sure that everybody on who's watching today is invited to join the Adobe community for the beta apps, because we do keep a separate set of forums that are up on community.adobe.com. That QR code that's right in the middle there, if you need to, you can just go to community.adobe.com and you can search for Premiere Pro Beta, After Effects Beta to get access to these forums. The QR code will kind of shortcut you into them if need be. But a lot of what we're showing here is actually stuff that's been listed. In a lot of cases, there's an announcement post when these new functions come to the beta to let you know that, hey, we've gotten this to a stage where we want you to go in and play with it. And this not only helps with stability, but it does help with the actual development and the design of the feature itself. Oftentimes, there can just be something that, from an engineering standpoint, we're not aware of a particular workflow that might just like it'll really explode the use of a feature. And this has been super, super successful for us to see the community actually engaging with these new features. And I can see here one of the ones on the After Effects list, there's something here about new presets. Victoria?
Yeah, there might be 33 new presets.
I didn't mean to
And
steal your thunder there.
yeah, so that's the thing I was going to show next. I'm really excited about these because some of these are so useful and there's some really clever, cool tools in here. We've had a lot of fun internally just playing with them. Some of these are created by Evan Abrams, who you may know from Motion Design Hotline. Some of these are created by folks on the After Effects team, including John Colombo made some amazing number counters. That's one of the things I want to show. But first, I just want to show, we've got some really key stuff that you got to do just quickly, like anime speed lines. Oh, what did I do? Am I in the wrong version of After Effects? Uh-oh. I might need to launch a different version of After Effects. I think I'm in a dev build. I think my presets are newer than my build. So
that
I'm
that
gonna
is a
relaunch After Effects.
yeah, that's a challenge that we all face in showcasing the latest and greatest. So again, where you would normally go to play with this publicly is open up your Creative Cloud desktop application and go to apps or go to all apps and then click on the beta apps to get access to this. It'll get you in and actually start using this stuff. Now, Victoria's a special case. She's got access to
pile of dev builds on here.
yeah, what we like to call like a rogue build or something that's not quite ready for the public beta, and that's what might have been going on here. But
Yes, I think it is.
Okay, that's
All right.
awesome.
All
But
right. I'm
yeah,
gonna check a bunch of boxes here and let's load up a different one. Let's see if that
awesome.
one's gonna work. That time it worked just fine. There we go. Got some instant anime speed lines so you can speed
Woohoo!
up your project. There's some really fun ones in here. I love that one. Similarly, the anime radial effect is really handy. These are cool backgrounds that you could just drop in super quickly. And part of what's fun about them is you get the behind the scenes of how these are built, how these have been constructed, so you can start playing with them and exploring and controlling things. And they've got controls at the top, so you can do stuff like adjust the center point for this for these radial lines. I could put this over here instead. And see, these have the controls built in so you can customize the look and you can keep digging and mess with them, explore, make them your own. The number counters are also really cool. I want to show those for sure. Let's see,
That used to
we've
be
got
such
a
a request. I would get like at 5 o'clock on a Friday, I'd get a phone call from some game show asking about building some sort of special custom countdown timer or count up timer, or yeah, it's really
this
great to see presets.
this stuff was hard to do and to do monospaced too with any
Yeah.
typeface. So now I can mess with the value. I can choose different currency formats for different countries. I can choose different currency symbols. I have all of this control here. I can play with how much do I want to, how many zeros do I want, how many points after the decimal do I want. I can turn that off or add a ton. All of this is built in. These are really, really flexible. And this stuff is the kind of thing that people need to do all the time. And so we really focused with rebuilding our presets around building stuff people will reach for a lot. Another one that is super, super useful here, and I'm jumping back to Bridge because it's one of the easiest ways to browse these, is, let me grab, I think I missed a couple here. Where's my text box? 2D, oh, they're right at the front. 2D text box. And this is going to create a shape for me. And then I can choose my text layer and drop that behind it. And I've got an instant text box. I can adjust the measurement. I can add some scaling. I can add some padding. I want to make this bigger than my type. And this will stick. So as my
Wow.
text animates, if I want to change the value here, maybe I want to just have this not such a big value and I don't want any extra zeros. It's going to change the size of the box. I don't want any digits after the decimal. And it will snap to this and stay stuck to it. But it's also just a shape layer. So I could customize this like any shape layer in After Effects. And that's what I love about these presets is they let you jump ahead. They let you do something you need to do all the time really quickly, but they still give you access to every other tool that you have in the box. And that's what's part of so fun. That's the part of this that's so fun to me is you can continue to explore and you really can make them your own.
And this is something, will that work in a motion graphic template that gets sent over to Premiere?
Sure will. They're I think pretty much all of these, you can pack them up, send them over to Premiere, make the number editable, and suddenly you've got a number with a text box behind it, and it'll adjust as the number adjusts.
Oh, very cool.
It's
Very
good
cool.
stuff.
We got a couple of feature requests coming in. Now, normally we don't really talk too much about adding or requesting new features here, but these are, one of them is, I think is something worth talking about. Stern Effects, somebody there we know,
Hey, we know him. Hey.
asks, it would be great if we could blur the shadow, add effects to them like noise and grain.
So we've got a couple things in the works around shadows. So all I can say at the moment is stay tuned. But we also, shadows right now with Advanced 3D only work with the environment lights. And so we know we've got a long shadow roadmap ahead of us, like
Very
those
cool.
long shadows you get toward the end of the day.
Absolutely. And Roland also asks about object tracking in After Effects, wants a feature request dealing specifically with object tracking.
That's a really good feature request to drop in our ideas section on our beta forum. We've got you might have shown this earlier, Karl, but we've got a forum for our betas. We've got feature request links. And that's the kind of thing where you can post what you're looking for, how you'd like it to work, how you imagine it working. And you also can then invite other people to comment as well. So that's a community where we love reading those. We read everything that comes in. And there's some really good ideas in there that have become reality.
Yes, yes, it's really great. I mean, it doesn't have to be a full page novel on something. If you have a cool idea that you can sum up in a sentence or two, that's always great. I've seen some folks take the time and effort to, mock up UI designs and say, "Hey, I'd love to see this, do this in this particular way, and here's a widget that you don't have to go that crazy with it. Even just the simple stuff. Usually the simpler stuff is the easier stuff to implement. And, this is something that the engineering team really dives into these forums pretty deeply and looks at things that can be tackled in a short period of time. And just in the last couple of releases with Premiere, I've seen added to the beta, they'll go into these forums and see if there's like the top 10 items, how easy those are to knock off. And they will usually get in there and just get them done. And so it's a great way to sort of get buy-in if there's a particular thing that you're looking for, you'd like to see the software do. All right. I'm just checking to see if there's anything else going on in the beta forums. We've kind of covered, I think, the vast majority of what we are looking to provide to you guys. We really enjoy doing this session, just talking specifically about what's new in the beta apps, and really want to get you guys to come and join and start to tinker and play around with the betas if you guys get a chance. So please feel free to jump into the different forums that I'll put them back up on the screen here so that you can see those. There we go. So just jump into these forums. Feel free to, if you see something that you like, you can upvote it, which is great. If there's something that's missing, you can put it in here. If you're playing with the beta, and this is something that's very important, so many people use workflows in different ways. And I'm not just talking about like a different camera format or a different computer format, but sometimes the underlying code, if you're going through and you're doing a specific thing, whether you're doing it by dragging and dropping from an operating system window or going up to the menu choices and selecting something there or hitting a keyboard shortcut, sometimes going through all the various options, there can be a particular combination that isn't working in the newest beta version. We always recommend, if you test out your workflow, if you get a chance to just create a copy of a project, test it out in the beta for a bit. It really helps us make sure that when the next release comes out, that your workflow is already gone through kind of a step of kind of been proven and tested with all the different variables that exist in your facility, whether it's shared storage, network configuration. There's so many things that can be outside of our control when it comes to making sure that a workflow stays as a smooth experience as you go through upgrade steps. So really love you guys to participate and join into this.
Yeah, and I'll chime in and add that there's also the hardware aspect of, we don't have every possible configuration of hardware in the lab, and we do a lot of performance testing and things like that, but then sometimes we release something out into the world and discover, hey, this is incompatible with a piece of hardware that we weren't able to test on. For example, one of the things that's in After Effects beta right now is the ability to, or not the ability, sorry, is GPU accelerated UI on Windows. And we had to make some tweaks there after that went into beta to work with a wider array of hardware. We've also expanded capabilities, so the 3D engine should work now with more Intel machines that were previously not able to take advantage of some of these new features. So there's another good chunk of our users who get access to stuff. But part of having to turn that off came from finding out what wasn't working in beta and then figuring out how we could get that working again. So you'll see things in beta come in and then you'll see them change over time. I mean, animated models change so that now when you change which animation track you're using, it changes the layer duration by default. Because one of the things we heard was, this is really cool, but I've got 6 animation tracks in my model. They're all different lengths. And how do I find the start and end point? So that's a feature where we got some feedback and we made changes. And being a part of that development process really means that you can have features that serve you. And that's what we're trying to do. We really want to hear from people as we're building stuff to make sure we're building things in the most useful way possible.
Awesome. Well, just to recap what I covered earlier in this session, if you want to watch the recap later on, I went through Premiere and covered some of the new changes with the new Spectrum UI as it's been added into Premiere, modernizing the user interface, making things more legible, easier UI interactions, and many more. I covered the new properties panel, which we're super excited about because it's a contextual panel that gives you control over your selections and even lets you make changes to multiple clips in a sequence, which is something you've never been able to do before. And I also covered new sound effects that are found in the Essential Sound panel. So there's a library of 15,000 plus sound effects that are free in addition to the paid sound effects. There are a lot of new sound effects that are found directly in the Essential Sound panel that you can bring in and play right in your sequence.
Oh, and I've got, let's see, what did I cover? It's a big long list. I've got a big long list of stuff. Yeah. Well, we missed a month with After Effects, and so there's a lot to catch up on. Embedded animation support for 3D models, shadow catchers, color shadows, being able to extract depth maps and apply depth-related effects. One thing I didn't demo that's also in beta right now is support for OBJ models and Adobe stock import from Creative Cloud libraries. There's now cameras and light properties in the properties panel, We've updated our 3D shading, and we've got 33 new presets, and I demoed about 3 of them. So there's 30 more. So there's lots to try out. I saw Roland ask about textile expressions. That's a pretty technical thing to get into in a live stream, but there's some powerful new scripting and expression stuff that's also in beta right now. So we've got lots to try out, and we really are looking for feedback on all of it so that it can come to a release near you when it's ready.
Awesome. Awesome. I think with that, we will wrap things up for today. I want to thank everybody for participating on Behance, all the other places that you can watch this show. And there's a great show coming up next on the channel. So stay tuned.
Oh, thanks, everyone.